All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. It's a State of the Nation where we talk about matters, politics, and everything between. We were talking about the cabinet nominees and the reaction from my guests now. Joining us now is Honorable Dan Manzo, Senator from Makueni. Thank you so much for making time. And before we get into the feedback that's coming, a lot of it at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll read some of them right now. I see Honorable Tyson Ouma there reminding Cherargei that saying that Ruto is now the president of Kenya, not a Nandi president. It's not a must for a Nandi PS. We can have people from marginalized communities. Either way, the president exercises constitutional function. I'll give you a chance to respond to that later on. But Honorable Manzo, what is your assessment of the cabinet lineup?
Yes, first of all, you know, a cabinet lineup should represent the face of Kenya. As much as possible, all corners of the country should be represented. It should not exceed 22, as required by the Constitution. And the position of Chief Minister under the law cannot be exercised in any other manner other than by the Constitution, and unless you amend the Constitution by referendum. The Chief Minister must first become a cabinet minister before be a Chief Minister. That is, must first be vetted by Parliament. And there is no other way a position of executive of that level can be achieved in Kenya legally, unless through Parliament and through vetting. So I'm here to see how our very good friend Honorable Musalia will become a chief minister without having been vetted by Parliament. There's no executive order which can amend the Constitution of Kenya. So I'm yet to see how that will play out. Every other person who comes to be vetted first must, you know, there is this idea as if we should be in one party state that, you know, we have majority and minority, which is still argumentative up to now. Assuming that the House now has majority by secret ballot, then it means that the House will vote. And if the House is going to vote, it means that we must appreciate that there is a majority in the House and a minority in the House. The minority, you know, will have their say, and the majority will have their way. And therefore, these cabinet ministers must be vetted thoroughly. They are, you know, everybody's history, whatever they have done with public service. You know, Kenyans are invited to file affidavits so that Kenyans know who is going to be their leader, and Chapter 10 of the Constitution has to be applied, integrity, so that by the time somebody becomes a cabinet secretary, then they are fit to sit in that position. So I'm sure the so-called opposition, because there is no opposition in the current constitution, but now that the practice is that we must have government and opposition, then the opposition to be allowed to do its work. And I remember the president say that he wants a strong opposition. He wants his government to be checked thoroughly. So allow us to check and check these cabinet secretaries thoroughly. Allow Kenyans to bring all manner of complaints, including those who claim that their loved ones have been murdered by any of these candidates. Let them also have their say through their members of Parliament, and that's what should form a good government. I am very sure that the president will be knowing some details of some of these people while the vetting is going on. So if I were him, and I believe that's what he'll do, allow those who will drop to drop. Then they will be replaced by others, so that we can be governed by people of integrity, and people will not serve Kenyans with ill will, and who will also get goodwill from Kenyans. Is there a chance that all of them will go through? Well, there's a chance. From the practice I saw with the previous, since 2013, what happens in Parliament, whatever goes in Parliament is processed by force. Whether you like it or not, votes are found, the person has to go through. But the actual practice should be, if somebody is not desirable or information has come out to question the integrity of that person, I think they should even resign by themselves. And they should not be forced through. The House should be allowed to do its work. If members of Parliament, even the ones from majority, are not happy with any of these candidates, they should not be forced through. I believe the followers of President Ruto are so many. They have so many other qualified people.
Yeah.
If you have a problem and Parliament has a problem with you, I believe Parliament should be allowed to do its job, and the leader of majority and the House, the committees should be allowed to, if they feel they should drop somebody, let that person be dropped and replaced with another person, even if it's regional balancing from the same region, and that we have Kenyans leading us who have integrity and who will not shame the president. If they use that force, I've seen before, and force somebody to become cabinet minister by whatever means, and even protect them from being removed, because you should be able to be hired and fired by Parliament and by Kenyans. If that is not allowed at all, then that will begin to be the cracks of that particular government, and I believe Kenyans will make a judgment for themselves.
Yeah, and Governor Motangi, you're the one who brought this up, when you mentioned the opposition saying that they might stage a fight against some of these CSs.
Yes.
Would you recommend that they all go through, despite Chapter 6 being very clear on leadership and integrity, and some of them having questions, even though, yes, it is a court case, there's a presumption of innocence until proven guilty, but doesn't that go against the moral fabric of the society? There are people who could still sit in instead of having people with tainted images.
Well, you know, Trevor, that's our law to begin with. But let me begin by saying that my comments would not be at all that that Parliament should not do its job. They should. They should vet them, ask questions that are well-intentioned to bring out issues that would be of concern to Kenyans. And I believe that the nominees have the duty to answer those questions to the full satisfaction of the team that will be asking them those questions. What I was decrying is the approach, as you may have heard in undertones, from various speakers, including what Wandai was saying, including what my good brother and Senator Mbade, I have not congratulated you, Senator. Welcome to that house where we've been.
And I congratulate you also for becoming governor.
Thank you. So you hear a bit of it, that there's likely to be some political motivation behind some of the questions that would be intended to be asked to these people. Either want to ridicule them, humiliate them, distort the fact of law that, yes, it is true that you could be in court charged with any offense, but that at that level remains an allegation, and there's no difference between you and that person, you know, in the eyes of the law. That's what we need to make clear to our people to understand. Yeah. Because not until then, when it is proved or proven beyond reasonable doubt that those people are guilty, that's then when you would, they would carry that responsibility. So I think it is most important that we say to our colleagues, and I would dare many of them, you will find, Trevor, that if the roles were reversed, and those that are saying all those things and promising hell and doom to those nominees when they go to Parliament, if it was themselves to go through the same fate, you'd be shocked by what you see. Maybe some of them have worse matters pending before courts, even before the court of public opinion, which are much more serious about misappropriation, about ill conduct, you know, unsociable behavior, a lot of things that would come up. So it's the typical case of, you know, pointing at the speck in one's eye and ignoring the log in your own. Secondly, let me also say, because I've served in Parliament for those 10 years, that it is important for the House of Parliament to enjoy in the eyes of the people of this country the platform of you know, reverence, if you like, that the House of Parliament should enjoy, where people know that this is a house where matters go to be discussed with not only integrity, but with the value and on the basis of law. Yeah. Because if we reduce Parliament into some house of schemes where you do things, and we've been working very hard to distinguish Parliament and some of the first county assemblies you saw, where people walk in with daggers and rungus and whatever. We will need to ask our new legislators to uphold the dignity of Parliament. So I believe, finally, that let the names go. They'll be vetted.
Okay.
And most likely, you're going to find that if we were to follow what the law requires, they would sail through. If a case is proven for somebody who is already a cabinet secretary, and they're convicted, then the consequences kick in, and that person loses their position, and a new nominee will be nominated.
Okay. So, Chiragi, let's talk about something else here. And there was a concern around when you mentioned president and saying he comes from Nandi and all that. There was someone who asked whether at this particular point, you know, the president is for everyone in Kenya. As you react to that also, are you concerned that there was no CS nominee for the Ministry of Devolution? In fact, there's a concern that that particular ministry has been scrapped off. You two being senators plus a governor was here. Are you concerned that Kenya Kwanza doesn't seem to be keen on devolution, like critics say?
Thank you, Trevor. Allow me to congratulate my brother, Senator Dan Manzo. I know he's a seasoned lawyer and an experienced legislator, and to wish him well. I saw him eagerly learning during the induction in Naivasha, and I hope he learned the best. But the other things that he might not have gotten, I will be willing to, of course, not pro bono, but at a fee, to teach him how to survive in that house and how to oversight my good friend and my former colleague. And I'm happy he's sitting next to the governor, so I hope the relationship between governors and senators should be encouraged. And he should thank God that Governor Kimani Wamatangi was a senator. So he understands the challenges and engagements between senators and governors. Secondly, I want also to thank him because we have always insisted, and the president has said, that he wants a robust, very vibrant checks and balances. And I'm happy when I see my colleagues in the opposition saying they are ready to oversight, to do the vetting. And I don't have a problem. And I want to encourage all cabinet nominees to avail themselves before the vetting committee, be ready to answer the questions, because those vetting committee or members of parliament are representatives of the people. So I hope all the nominees will be ready both psychologically and any documents that is required. The only problem I will have is where we want to mob lynch because of various allegations that are facing them. And let us allow the due law, the process, and the law to take its course. If there is anybody facing within the cabinet nominees, the courts are there. And I think the judiciary of this country, the courts of law are up to the task. And I think if there are any issues, they will resolve legally. On the issue of course, Nandi is part of Kenya. It is not, Nandi does not exist in exclusion. And as my brothers have said, cabinet is the cabinet of the Republic of Kenya. It doesn't mean that if a cabinet, for example, from Kitui or anywhere else, Governor Mvurya, the nominee of mining, he is also the cabinet minister of the entire country. So I was just pointing out that regional bodies must be looked, and therefore the president comes from my region. And I was not saying that he's a president of Nandi. I'm saying he's a president of the Republic of Kenya who happens to come from Nandi. And I think my brother might have misunderstood. On the third issue that you have raised, and of course we have a right just like any other Kenyan to have people from Nandi represented in cabinet. I don't think there is a problem, because this country belongs to the people of Nandi and the rest of the nation. So even as appointments continue, the president's favor will continue getting appointments to Nandi, even to Makueni, to Kiambu, and many other areas. And I know Kimani Wamatangi is lucky because both the majority leader of National Assembly and Minister Moses Kuria, who happens to have been his competitor in the previous elections, have also. So it doesn't mean that the Kiambu does not need deserve or PSS or CSS. And finally, on the issue of devolution, I think that that ministry did not need to exist, even from the word go. And we have had even former chairs of COG, specifically for former governor of Bomet, Mheshimiwa Isaac Ruto. Because the real challenge is not even, I've heard the former governor of Kakamega, Weekly for Paranya, saying that it is a link. It was, but you already have an intergovernmental relations that already exist. So if there are donors who want to fund devolve programs, who want to participate in devolution, there is already linkages that has already been developed that those donors can participate. And by the way, those things can be handled. The Deputy President, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, he himself chairs the IBEC. And those are some of the issues if donors want to raise on how to participate in devolution. They can either engage the government. You know, these national and county governments exist mutually, but they are independent but distinct. It means if a donor from America wants to fund a project in Nandi, it doesn't mean that they need approval of the national government, because these are interdependent, mutual, and distinct form of government, because we have two levels of government, national government and county government. So if there are any issues, they can go to IBEC. The only challenge, Trevor, and I hope the Kenya Kwanza and we shall work together, because the president has shown goodwill to devolution, and of course we shall push through Senate. There are so many, Trevor, functions that were devolved.
Yeah.
But interestingly, and that is why we went to court when I was the chair, JLAC, some of the clauses have been introduced by the National Assembly. And I'm happy, you know, when Dan Manzo, senator, was in the lower house, that is the National Assembly, they used to fight Senate and saying Senate should not get power. But most of the legislation, Trevor, that was passed created a clawback clauses against devolved function. You find the national government devolves devolved function, but they don't follow with funding. So the biggest challenge is not even having the Ministry of Devolution. The biggest challenge is the national government to fully devolve some of those functions and ensure those devolved functions follow with the costing and the funding of those devolved functions. And the biggest challenge is that if the government, and I hope when the Deputy President and the IBEC and the President will look at this, is the delay in terms of disbursement of county funds.
Yeah.
And I know luckily we have Governor Kimani Wamatangi here and many other governors. The biggest challenge has been those clawback clauses that have been introduced in some of the legislation. You remember, for example, health is almost 99.9% devolved. You should only have the issue of policy to remain with the parliament. But you now find the Ministry of Health has the largest budget of health that without these functions, with only referral hospitals, like a number of them, like Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret, Mama Lucy, Kenyatta National Hospital. I think that those are at least they are not more than 5. Yet they have the large budget against 47 county governments' health budgets. So I think what is important is not even about devolution ministry. It is about ensuring that devolution works by ensuring that money follows devolved function, quick disbursement of money to those functions, and also getting the goodwill from the national government, and that respect and distinct mutual agreement engagement between the government, that is the national executive, and the county governments. So as a Senate, I think anytime, any minute, we shall push to ensure. And also, finally, on the goodwill is that where a situation where National Assembly considers the law that talks about devolved function, Trevor, we will also try to get undertaking from the president that before they sign some of this legislation, they should get a concurrence or a speaker of the Senate and National Assembly, an undertaking that that law has been considered by both houses. That way we'll show the goodwill also towards devolution. All right.
Honorable Manzo, you know, Eugene Wamalwa, the former CS Defense and Devolution, sent out a tweet congratulating the nominees, and then he says, but I'm at a loss as to what happens to devolution. Is it an oversight or is it not a priority to this administration?
I think the Ministry of Devolution is very important because the counties are a very integral part of the Constitution. And when Honorable Eugene Wamalwa played that role. You see, like when the COG is meeting, when the governors are meeting, you need that link to the cabinet, and you need to raise issues with the minister, which will be able to be factored. Probably there can be an amendment, because it's not yet too late, to include this devolution aspect as one of the roles in one of the ministries, an associated ministry, because you know ministries can be combined. After they were released into two, you can have one minister even dealing with that particular matter. And that's why I was telling you earlier on that I've seen that the cabinet is full. You have fully covered 22 slots. Clearly, devolution is not there. So, because it is not too late, and I know President Ruto is a very open-minded person, and this one is my senator, my good friend here, Honorable Cheregai, easily reaches him on phone. I think he's getting this information. There is a very big need, and as a good lawyer, you should not misadvise his boss. There's a very serious need that we have a devolution component being there. It's not only in Kenya. Even in some of other countries where we have a similar structure, there's always a very powerful devolution minister or somebody play that role to be able to link up the counties or the governors, including DRC Congo has a devolution minister. So and since now we are part of the larger Eastern Central Cooperation, I think it's something we should consider, and that docket, that role, should be assigned. Probably that's what will be one of the roles of Honorable Mudavadi. I don't know, but it's one of the things which should clearly be linked. Yeah. And even the counties have such a huge political muscle. You know, governors, they're so, you know, they have a lot to do, including even organizing political parties and politics. So I think that in one way or another there must be a very good link to that, and what Honorable Wamalwa did was very important for the country. You know, he was able to tie up the country and to link up devolution and serve the people. And because the main idea is to serve the people, I think this should be included in one of the ministries which is related to the same. Okay.
Governor Matangi, was this an oversight, having played both roles, now as a governor and former senator for 10 years? Is there a requirement for a Ministry of Devolution?
No, Trevor, I think the statement to make would be that the Ministry of Devolution was a very important ministry, and the word is was, because at the advent of devolution, it was important then to have that transition period carried over. Remember, we had the Transition Authority, now IGTRC, but there needed to be a bigger body at ministerial level that would have played the role that the ministry did, you know, in ensuring that there is that period when counties started from crawling to standing up and walking. Yeah. And I believe for that matter, they played the role that they were supposed to have played or should have by now. It's 10 years down the line. And so, if anything, we should not be crying over its continued existence, because the focus should be on making counties self-reliant and build capacity. As my colleague and friend Cherage was saying, devolve all functions and follow the functions with funds. Capacity build, you know, for the counties, and make sure that counties now can be able to run their affairs. One of the realities that no one can pretend that they don't understand is that the county government that is well run has a higher chance of running the affairs of its people in close proximity with the source of the problems and continuous communication with the people who deserve those services. With that closeness, they're able to run a better job. They're able to do a better job, run that duty more effectively. And so we can't presume, and I believe we all clear in our minds that when we rooted and fought for devolution, we wanted to do it with that model, whereby we are saying that somebody sitting in Afya House in Nairobi knows the problem of somebody who is a mother who is suffering in Garissa or in Hola, and can attest and evaluate the necessities of that person and address those issues. They cannot be able to do that better than somebody who is sitting in Kiambu town, for that matter, like myself when I'm the governor in Thika town, or any other person sitting in any other part of this country. And so our best solution is to ensure that we grow capacity. I think the way forward, and I have to say, in my view, I think President William Samoei Ruto made the right decision in now letting this period of uncertainty go away by doing away with that ministry, and also challenging counties. And I'm okay with it as a governor. That now I know that with that decision, I have to work harder and make my county work the way it should. And I will go out and look for answers and solutions, and also join in the quest to build capacity for my people, whom I'm serving with, to resolve the issues of my county. What the ministry would do then, I will go out and seek how I should be able to do it in a better way. And so I think it's just that period when you find that you've become a big boy, and you now have to leave the house and be a man, and so you have to find a way of surviving. I believe that is the stage at which the counties are. What we would just be urging the president is to follow that good gesture that he has demonstrated by ensuring that his people on ground now in Treasury, in the other relevant agencies, follow that gesture and action by ensuring that they do the right thing. I was sitting just a few days in a meeting in the Council of Governors, and we were debating and discussing on the right and timely move by His Excellency the President to instruct that fertilizer should be immediately made available to all farmers at a lower cost. And then in that discussion with the ministry, a lot of gaps were coming out. That you find that the quick successive interventions that ought to be done to ensure that that process is also equal to the goodwill the president has shown are missing. You find that farmers right now, even myself, like yesterday when I was in the office, I was receiving calls and messages and reports that farmers are saying, by the way, we have seen the fertilizer, but the one that has come is of the wrong prescription, is the wrong type. And it's not that the right type is not there. It is that coordination. Oh, we are still waiting. It's not arrived in this depot, but it is there. And what we are saying is, those people who were serving in the previous system must understand that this is a new administration that means business. And we intend to get things done differently. And so what they have to do is to get up and know that they have to work and serve the people with urgency. And accurately, and not go to bed. This administration, and you have seen from what His Excellency is doing. I mean, he is full of energy, and energy that is positive energy. This is what the rest of us must emulate, and this country, I believe, is going to move forward. So, doing away with devolution, I would not shed tears over it. I would only stand up and rise up and say, let's get on to work and do what we have to do.
Right. There is one very positive thing which has happened with this cabinet.
Yes.
Since independence, we've had a ministry for cooperatives. With the President Kenyatta, the time of President Moi, and very important when Honorable Nyaga was a minister for cooperatives. Cooperatives are so important in a country. And for the last 10 years, in fact, one time I had a discussion with President Ruto about this matter when he was deputy president. And the Department of Cooperatives really lobbied and wrote letters, and there was no Ministry of Cooperatives, even in 2017. So I am very happy on that particular Ministry of Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises Development. This is how you build a nation. This is how a nation has savings. This is how you help the SACCOs, you help the farmers. And I think the proposed Minister Chelugoi will really have a handful, and he's going to be one of the ministers commanding a very big and important institution. And with 14 million members, the cooperative movement is so huge and very important. All these milk processing, all these institutions, they have been lost. Coffee, tea, they have been lost for years, and we really lobbied and talked about it on the floor of the House. So I am very happy. At least, you must speak where something good has been done.
Yeah.
I'm very happy President Ruto has done this.
And
he's gotten it correct. He's gotten it correct, because very many Kenyans and very serious institutions have suffered.
Yes.
This is why you have the cooperative bank. This is why you have Harambee Sacco.
Yes.
Harambee Sacco is bigger than many banks.
Yes.
But it has to be managed, in a very serious manner. And if you have to ever grow the savings of this country, in America, the credit unions are the ones which run the economy.
Yeah.
So really, I want the SACCOs of this country now to run the economy. And that's a lot of hope for Kenyans. And even now on this show, urge Kenyans to join. There's no way you will survive alone. Join a group, join a cooperative, be part of the cooperative movement now that you have a minister. And you will grow rich. Forget about all the other narratives. They will not work. The only narrative which will work.
This is now good.
The only narrative which will work is a narrative of a cooperative. And it goes beyond government to government. It's the only way you as a member, you will get money to your pocket, you will build a house, you will buy land, and you will expand without waiting for the help of government. This is where Kenyans really have to look to. And I really want to applaud the cooperative movement for this effort, because they have done it continuously for many years. And I believe now with this, Kenyans have a direction in terms of getting money to somebody's pocket.
I think Manzo is doing good politics. Now he should induct the rest on one. Quick one, there is the issue of Musalia Mudavadi. I've heard him saying that we must go for referendum to amend. But that is what former CS Interior was doing. The president has indicated he will issue an executive order. And you have seen there is a clear pecking order. That after the president, there is the deputy president, then the senior most office will be of His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi. So there is a clear-cut distinct roles, and I request my brother, since now he seems to understand how checks and balances are and opposition, good opposition is to wait for that executive order. There is no way that the president and our council will in any way try to undermine or infringe on the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Because the role of Musalia Mudavadi will be to coordinate ministries, coordinate functions, and ensure that even the Presidential Delivery Unit, among others, and in fact report to the Deputy President, who will in turn now report to the President, or jointly report to both the President and the Presidency, so that it becomes easy. So I want to say that the boss of Musalia Mudavadi will be the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. So there is a distinguished and clear structure on how Musalia Mudavadi will. And I've heard people saying the position Musalia is holding his cabinet without portfolio. It isn't. There is already a job description. And if you remember the president very well, even outlined in a clear-cut manner the roles of the deputy president. You remember when he was the deputy president, the current president suffered because the retired president, when there was that differences that played out even in the public, is because there were no duties that were assigned. The Constitution is a principal assistant of the president. So at that point then, he doesn't want his deputy Rigathi Gachagua to undergo through the same, and that is why those duties have been assigned in clear manner. And I think Musalia Mudavadi is in a better and clear place, and therefore anybody should no doubt is the third senior most office in terms of executive that exists in this country. So Senator Maanzo, being a senior lawyer, does not give him a license to mislead the public. No one is trying to amend. By the way, as Kenya Kwanza, we are aware on how to amend the Constitution. There is the popular initiative and parliamentary initiative. No one has tried to introduce the other. So I request my senior learned friend, at least, but finally on the issue of cooperatives, I agree with him. Yeah. Even from where I come from, we have several cooperatives that run milk, like Tankina, Kabiet Dairies. We have coffee cooperative societies. We have, and these societies, by the way, and I agree with Senator Manzo, is it will be easier, even as Governor Wamatangi has said, to distribute even something like fertilizer. Because if you have a cooperative society, for example, called Tankina somewhere in Mosoriot, it is easy. You ask them how many farmers you have. He says, we have 100 farmers. You talk to the National Cereals and Produce Board, they provide. So it is easy even to manage farmers and register them through the cooperative society. And the future is with cooperatives, because you can even use for credit facilities. I have seen farmers, by the way, Trevor, where they use check-off system. If I'm taking 20 liters of milk to a dairy, Kabiet Dairy, for example, and I want to pay for school fees, they can give me money as I supply milk. And I think that is where we should encourage, and I agree with Senator Manzo, that the future is with cooperative societies, and encourage more Kenyans to use cooperative, so that even through the ASLA fund, it will be easier even to access ASLA fund when you are in a group, when you are in a company, when you are in CBO or any cooperative society, so it becomes much more easier.
Okay. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Fuliza issues and charges relief also, and how to see, and I'll come with to Governor to also find out how the counties can rope into that and help elevate the costs for the people. But first, let's bring up some of the feedback that's coming through. A lot of it is coming through. Let's read some of them at Trevor Mbijat, Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring them up on screen and say what you see what you're saying. It's a state of the nation. We're talking about matters, politics, and everything in between there. There was also an issue of the hot air judgment. Raila and Karua dismissing Supreme Court petition judgment as lacking merit in both fact and law. We'll find out what our panelists think. Amaganga Mustaf says it shocks that the Constitution can be interpreted upside down, with lawyers who are supposed to help laymen in the streets to understand that allegations remain allegations. It doesn't bar one from a top position. Okay. Bobo Tieno says, for the first time in Kenyan history, a cabinet has been named without complaints from different communities. Clearly shows regional balance was well articulated, except from politicians with their politics. Okay. Kinywa Mushoki says there's no way we can have a Ministry of Devolution to facilitate donors to counties. I'm happy the president is making way for Kenyans to have access to affordable and non-collateral credit. Okay. Odongo Rolex says President Ruto has started very well, despite few individuals named in his cabinet which have a questionable character. I rate him at 85%. Okay.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Bobo Tieno Wino says, with or without devolution, devolution will still work and stay under the new constitution. I applaud President William Ruto's decision to do away with it because it was wasting taxpayers' money. But also earlier on, Governor Wamatangi, as you respond, I saw earlier on a picture on by one person called Dikush when you were dealing with the issue. Dikush. Yes, when we can bring that up in terms of, he was saying, kindly ask Governor Wamatangi if this act of valor is setting best practice on disaster response, because you were captured trying to do rescue, but we'll bring up that picture later on and show you whether you can respond to that. Do we have that picture? Let's bring it up and see what, yes, there. What was going through your mind at that particular point? Because I see Dikushia is saying that this act of valor is setting best practice on disaster response, no safety on your part.
Well, you know, as you can see, all of us there, Trevor, I didn't have it, but you see, this was immediately after this house collapsed.
Yeah.
And you have two choices to make. Do you go around to the office to go and get headgear and whatever, or do you save people who are screaming inside and making phone calls? And they have few seconds or minutes to leave. And if you watched what happened, because I normally get to the office early, Trevor, and I was just about to get to the office. It was about 5:45 or 5:50 in the morning. And so immediately when I was just close to the office, I got a call. There's a house that has collapsed. And so I had to quickly make a turn, a detour to the place. I arrived there and I found it is just probably about minutes when the house building has collapsed. Remember, this is a 6-story building. and it collapsed on top of another house, other two houses. And so people are inside there. And we were the first responders to rescue the first victims. And so as you saw that picture, I didn't know that it was taken there. Where you see me peeking in is where we were hearing voices in there. And so we had to quickly act and before other help arrived.
Yeah.
Including, the photos that came up later of this, then you could see me later now in headgear because somebody went and brought after that. But we had to respond, and I'm glad to say, Trevor, that we managed to rescue. We took out 9 people. Yeah. Only 2 of them had passed on when we rescued them. But the other 7 were alive. Unfortunately, we lost 3 when they went to hospital, a mother and her 2 children. Trevor, I'm the one who dug out one of the boys, and I got him out when he was still alive, but unconscious. And and I've said that because you've asked this question. There was no time to think, man. There was no time to think. You just have to get on and do what you have to do. And even this morning, my heart still goes out to that family because the mother perished and the 2 boys. And, I can't still describe how I feel, having taken that boy and ran with him to the ambulance and put him there, only to be told that when he got to hospital, he passed away. I took a few photos, of his wall, there where he'd put some of the photos that our young boys paint, of a crocodile or whatever, a smart picture of it. And, I would relive that image and know how my innocent son would be a victim of that kind of, negligence and irresponsibility by our citizens, by failing to adhere to building codes, ensuring that you're building safe. It's unbelievable. But I just want to say to our people, really, that we must be our brother's keeper. No matter what you want to do, even if you're investing to make money. And by the way, in Kiambu, we are encouraging investors. We're saying, come and invest. We are a prime location for investors who want to build good buildings. And we are next to Nairobi, so we want to house people. But we are saying also, when you do that, ensure that you follow the rule. Yeah. Ensure that you follow building code. Let your construction site be supervised by qualified personnel who are experts. Yeah. And get your permits. And then we will support you and help you to build. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying as the governor of Kiambu onwards is that we are going to be very strict. Yeah. We have, there are about 7 buildings that have collapsed in less than 4 months. And that is a terrible record. And that shows that there's a huge negligence. We will encourage our people to come. We will help investors. Yeah. We will invite them and give them the best atmosphere to work. But we are saying, please, you will also have to follow the rule. Yeah. And we are going to enforce that.
But should you also have a better disaster response unit? Because yours was a rock and a hard place. Like you're saying that your delay to go and protect yourself literally meant life and death for other people. So yes, as the governor, they're looking up at you to help them, and you are there. But should you then have a better disaster response?
Yes, we should. That's quite true, Trevor. And that's one of the immediate goals that I'm working on as the governor of the county. That will have a better equipped, well and faster trained quick response unit, such that when those kind of things occur, because the reality is that we are a prime spot for that kind of construction, and that means risks would be higher. I'm working on ensuring that we have a response unit that is super placed to respond to this kind of thing. I acknowledge, indeed, that we would have been very stuck were it not that we got support from national government. And I want to thank His Excellency the President and the Deputy President, because they were so fast. Called National Disaster Response, and within a few hours they were there, found we had started the work. At local level, we will need to be more prepared. I would also want to urge my fellow governors that I think this is one of the areas that we need to look at much more closely, and ensure that now that we don't have a Minister of Devolution, as we were saying a few minutes earlier, that walking and running and standing on our feet means being prepared just like a national government is. And we build this kind of response units, equip them, train our personnel, such that we can be able to save lives when this kind of thing occurs.
Trevor,
So we'll do that.
Yes,
on this particular matter, you know, it has happened so many times in this country, and I think there's although we have disaster response, from the days of attack in 1998 to houses built negligently, and really I would like to lean more on the houses built negligently by investors in this country. And even in this case in Kiambu, this building damaged other buildings. Yeah. Yeah. People died. And every other time this has happened, the court cases on criminal negligence just disappear somewhere. I think it's something now between the governors and the national government. We must really come up with a way of reinforcing, because a lot of times you find now you are blaming the county for not making sure that everything has been done properly. And then at the same time, there's a role of national government. So we should not have this sort of deaths anymore. And I believe from the counties, from the national government, and from the developers themselves, really, as you develop, you should know you are going to go to jail if people die out of your negligence. And I think this message must go as early as possible. But we must have some examples of somebody going to jail because people died in their building. All of us, many Kenyans, and building is a good thing. And in fact, that's what the circles do. All these big buildings you see in Nairobi, 80–90% are from circles and are from cooperatives. So we, and the cooperatives have done very well, but the individual developers, you are finding that somebody does some corruption somewhere, takes a shortcut somewhere, and it ends to death. So I think this is a time from the courts, from the executive, from the counties. We became very serious on inspecting any building under construction, and even the ones which have been constructed and are likely to collapse in future. I think this is really something very serious, and the national government, whoever is going to be the Minister for Housing, and whoever is responsible. I know that law, part of it is devolved, part of it is national, but it leaves a gap somewhere where you can escape from in between. You run away from the county, and you are also running away from the national government. And in between there, we end up with death. So I think the COG must take up this matter, and we come up with a formula of ensuring no other Kenyans die out of this negligence.
Gerard, the judgment for the Supreme Court, the presidential petition, the full judgment came out. As a lawyer, and there's a reaction from Honorable Raila Odinga and Martha Karua dismissing the Supreme Court petition judgment as lacking in merit in both fact and law. In fact, they were specific that the language was that of an opponent rather than a neutral arbiter. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. I think before quickly on the issue of these issues of buildings, I think Kiambu, this is not the first time that a building has collapsed. What I want to challenge the National Construction Authority, NEMA, and other agencies, including county governments, is to have a multi-agency approach in terms of approval of buildings. And I think I agree with Senator Manzo that some of these criminal negligent cases end up collapsing because no one generally points. But the day we arrest and jail the agencies that approve some of these buildings, and also the day we jail and some of the individuals who are owners of this building, then the day will get serious in terms of ensuring approvals of some of these buildings. And you remember even sometimes when was it 2 years, 3 years ago, when the Solai Dam tragedy happened. And you remember when owners were taken to court, the case collapsed. It is only at the intervention of the Senate and the committee that I led, and that the prosecution, criminal prosecution against individuals still ongoing. So the day we take seriously, and I empathize and condole with the families that lost their loved one in Kiambu, is that it will be easier to some of this. Secondly, is on the issue of response of Azimio One Kenya Alliance party leader and the deputy dismissing. But you expect these are sour grapes because these are individuals who lost. I happened when the Supreme Court ruling was being made, I happened to have sat with the senior learned friend, my brother here, Senator Dan Manzo, and he agreed entirely. And he told me this case was to collapse from day one. Even his governor agreed. He appeared and he told me the Azimio One Kenya Alliance, and by the way, this conversation was not privileged. It was a conversation between colleagues. And he agreed that their part did not have substantive evidence that was to be adduced to courts of law. And therefore, this well-written, well-reasoned, and I think the problem is that, you know, the Supreme Court cannot write legalese for you to know that they have married the facts and the law. They must write a judgment that ordinary Kenyan in Katwana or Katozweni somewhere in Makueni can understand, or somebody somewhere in Tindret or somewhere in Kiambu or in Kibera can read that judgment and understand. For my own, I think the Supreme Court made a well-reasoned judgment. Okay. By the way, in fact, I allowed them because they even point weak areas of IEBC that should be relooked at, where they have even relooked the role of the chair in terms of verification, tallying, and declaration of results, how the IEBC should be run, how elections should be managed. And you remember, by the way, the current IEBC borrowed heavily from the judgment that was made by Maraga team-led in 2017. So from where I sit, in as much as, you know, you have a right to disagree and criticize the judgment, which is the right of Raila Odinga and other my brothers in Azimio One Kenya Alliance. Yeah. I know it shocks their supporters and everybody else that they came with the evidence in a lorry, but they were not able to move the court and convince. And my brother here will agree that it is how you present your evidence convincingly to the courts of law. So I think let us, this judgment will allow, and I want to challenge IEBC to look at this Supreme Court judgment, improve where they have failed. Because in future, my brother Trevor, when some of us, and I know Kimani Wamatangi was running for president until some other time when the kitchen became too hot, he decided to run for governor. I want when he wants to run for president in future, we have an IEBC that when they declare results running against Manzo should be able to accept defeat where it has been done fairly and done transparently.
Right. This is what under the bridge now, but I'd like us to talk about the expectation of Parliament today. But Manzo, you've been mentioned by Cherargei, so I'll give you a chance to respond. Just 30 seconds. Then we talk about President William Ruto is going to address Parliament today. Yes. What should his focus be on? But you can also respond to Cherargei because he mentioned you adversely. Yes.
I was one of the lawyers who prepared for this particular petition. And this particular petition was narrowed to the use of ICT and the changes which would happen while the transmission is airborne. You know, many Kenyans may not have understood what the judges seem to have brushed, or what becomes hot air of their judgment, because I'm allowed to criticize. I respect their judgment, but I'm allowed to criticize it, because they also called us hot air. And I found the Supreme Court getting into the realm of politics, deciding to politicize things. If you follow the hearing very well, judges asked very pertinent questions. But the final test is usually whatever went wrong, because there's no 100% perfect election. Was it sufficient enough to overturn the will of the people? And that's where the Supreme Court said it wasn't. But if you look to experts, if you talk to experts of IT, and I think that's where the crux of the matter is, we had quite a number of young experts who helped us in a very short while to come up with concrete evidence, which was presented by Senior Counsel Murgo, and also you know, quite a number of our young lawyers, there seem to have had a disconnect, you know, between the presentation of the technical evidence on that flight of the results and the role of one Jose Camargo, and whether you could hack the system and actually change. And we presented quite a number of forms which were done by Julie Soweto. This seems not to have been concretized, and people do not understand exactly what will happen and that hacking. Like in one case, from Nandi, you will have, it was a police station, a substation with Raila Odinga got 69, and William Ruto got a number that was totally to 170. But now in the final results, Raila Odinga had gone down, and the one of he lost by 60. He ended 61. He ended with 1 vote, and the other one went to William Ruto, 60, and that was done 4,000 times. But still, the judges found that it did not constitute a malpractice which will overturn the will of the people. Okay. So clearly, it then comes to a conclusion that whatever the difference between the two presidential candidates was, one could not determine whether these 4,000 stations or so where there was actual malpractice within the judges saw. Would then overturn the final judgment. And in my own opinion, I believe it would. But there were other things came to play. Whether now, if without Chebukati, for whatever reason, you have a commission which can announce another presidential result. And I believe the judges feared putting this country into a crisis. But ordinarily, they would have ordered a rerun. Okay. So for me, I believe that is in the past. And is what under the bridge. But the IT question has not only affected Kenya, it has also affected many other countries. Okay. And that is what seems to be the disconnect. From what Senior Counsel Murugo was presenting at Julie Soweto, that really never sank to the Supreme Court. Okay. Or they did not have, they themselves are also not experts of IT. Okay. And I believe the system was hacked. And so they did their one Jose Camargo.
Okay. It's what under the bridge, but
it was hacked. And if you allow the IT experts in this country to analyze this and to give you a result up to today, they will show you where and they will show you how Kenya Kwanza never won. Yes, over time. So there was no election.
Trevor, I would...
Then why is he the senator if there was no election?
For presidential.
It's over time.
No election for presidential.
I would have thought, because, you know, Dan Manzo is a very smart guy. I mean, to have been in the National Assembly, elected twice, and then proceed to the Senate. He's a politician who is worth respect as a good politician. And I thought that smartness would also extend to making the kind of judgment that you would expect to make. But hearing those comments is disastrous. Because, you know, Trevor, I would have thought, Manzo, you would have wanted this thing buried and forgotten for the time being, and don't bring it back to national discussion, because it will expose a lot of things that you don't want to be repeated to the public ear. And that's not good for the Azimio coalition. In fact, if I was their head, I would advise them not to talk about this thing again. Because if you allow this debate to continue, Kenyans will start looking at the Azimio team very differently. I say this with a lot of respect, because I respect the galaxy of lawyers they paraded in the Supreme Court. They were good lawyers, you know, and they have solid reputation. And I would not want to say anything contrary to that, but only one thing, that, you know, when the Supreme Court was using the wording that they decried a lot, one thing that maybe the Supreme Court would have done is also commented and awarded those lawyers for one unique thing: creativity. Yes, because you know, at one point, I felt the same emotions I felt when I was a young boy. My grandmother and one of my aunties was also very creative, telling us stories. You know, you remember the experience you had when you read the book on Jack and the Beanstalk. how you wake up one morning and you find that there's a bean that was thrown last night and it grew to heaven and you went to heaven. You know that kind of experience. Or when you watch, there's a big bird that is featured sometimes on National Geographic that captures other birds when they are in flight in the air and goes down to, you know, that kind of, you know, that kind of feeling. That's what we were feeling when some of these lawyers took to the podium, you know, and you know, one of these fine days, I hope Julie Soweto is watching, because one of these days, I would want, I mean, of course, with a lot of respect, and I would love to have a cup of coffee with her, because you know, when she was presenting at one point, I can't lie that I was not excited. And, you know, and when they were telling the story of how, you know, a Form 34A would be shot in the air on its way to bombers. And then Jose Camargo, somewhere in the clouds, would intercept it, capture it and alter, and then release it for Chebukati to receive when it has been altered. I mean, it was such high drama fiction that actually, you know, you don't want to get back there and get now the people to start talking about what was really happening. You would rather bury this story, Manzo, and your team. Yeah. Let the country now continue and say that was a trial that you did at justifying the loss. You know, by the way, on a serious note, Trevor, Azimio, in my view, did well, because they competed and they got 6.9 million votes. I said that here the last time. What they would be saying graciously, with a lot of gratitude and humility to the people of the Republic of Kenya, is that they gave them a lot of votes, but those votes were not enough. We did a better campaign. We convinced more people, and we won the election, and that's what elections are about. Yeah. And they would say thank you to those 6.9 million voters who gave them the votes. We are saying to our 7.3 million people that thank you very much, 7.2 million people that thank you very much, because elections are won by the majority of voters having made the decision over the minority. And that's why we have quickly onboarded and brought in most of the willing, and saying to the country now it's time to move forward as one. This is the attitude, Dan Manzo, my good friend, Senator, that should prevail now across Azimio, and let's build this country. Okay. Start building, do your practice and build muscle now, so that when we meet again in 2027, you will not be back to the Supreme Court, but this time now you'll be willing that we continue together up to 2032. Yeah. Then that time now, when our president is going home, we can have a rematch of our ages now, between myself and yourself. We
have 5 minutes now, closing remarks here. I'll start with the president is expected to address Parliament. What do you expect really quick as you make your closing remarks? 1 minute each.
Thank you, Trevor. I think today afternoon at 2:30 p.m. we expect President William Ruto to do his first inaugural address to the joint sitting of Parliament, both the Senate and the National Assembly. And one of the issues, or 3 or 4 issues that I would expect the President to address is his vision for the country in the next five years to come, the way of coming out of the cost of living, fixing the issue of debt distress that we have as a country, issue of food security, issue of international relations and climate change, and also, finally, the interrelationship he would want to build between the Parliament and the executive. So I'm looking forward that the President will give us his vision and finally give us maybe policy and legislative intervention that as Parliament we expect to do. Okay. So we shall be there to listen to the President, and I hope my colleagues from Azimio, led by Manzo, will be there, so that they don't only criticize from streets, but they should be listening, so that it is easy for this country to move forward. Okay, Manzo? Yes,
ordinarily after that speech, the two houses will debate it fully. And I believe I want to agree with the Honorable Charagai without repeating what he has said, because in parliamentary practice, you don't repeat what the other party has said. It's good for all of us to participate, so that when we critique this speech, we can be able to check the government thoroughly. There is one thing which is worrying me very much. You know, Kenya is in a nation, you know, in a community of nations. And one of the biggest challenges in the world now is climate change. And that's why we have no rains now, poor weather. And we should be increasing the forest cover all over. You know, in the drier areas, like in Ukambani, we have trees which grow there very easily without, like one called Mukau. And the higher grounds, where the guy comes from, we have trees. So we should really encourage every single Kenyan to plant a tree when the rains come. And totally discourage the shamba system. We know what it is. It is destructive. Let's do irrigation in the drier parts. Like now we are doing Thwake Dam, which is almost complete. I hope enough funding will be given to complete it, so that we increase the forest cover. We grow our food in the drier lands, which we have vast all over the country, by doing irrigation like Israel, and then increase our forest cover and save the world also as part of the rest of the world. So this issue of shamba system, you should actually encourage people to quickly leave those forests. And I believe he says so it will be done. And encourage every other Kenyan to plant a tree. 47 million of us, if we do 10 trees, I believe the forest cover will increase. So I'm looking forward for him to really living what he said in the UN, would increase our forest cover, save our environment, have more rain, do irrigation for food.
Yes, I would take the moment for my closing remarks to thank and congratulate Kenyans for how we have conducted ourselves after the elections. It is indeed as though there were no competitive elections. It is as though actually some of those disputes we're talking about never existed. Kenyans have behaved themselves and acted so encouragingly that you feel good to be a Kenyan. You know, there was a lot of expectation from around some of our neighbors, you know, neighboring countries, some people from outside, you know, global community, who had even started giving out warnings about visiting certain parts of this country or even traveling to Kenya. But Kenyans have made us proud as a nation. And the way they've behaved, I've seen, and I feel good, like I said earlier, to be a Kenyan, that we have now risen so high up that pedestal of self-realization that we can go and conduct elections, choose a winner, and then get on to our business. And most encouraging is that this election is an election of so many changes, so many firsts. If you look at what's happened now, it is going to be easier even to have debates here, because Manzo and any other people that will be calling here will not be looking at you as a governor or a senator from a certain region or a certain tribe. They'll be looking at you as a Kenyan legislator or leader. And that is how even Kenyans themselves now are viewing themselves. Tribalism is something we are burying way behind us very fast, and this election did very well. And that's why I would want to say to His Excellency, the President, the Deputy President, and Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, as they take the role of showing the way, that we should not deviate from that path. It's a good show when all of them are there, including Moses Wetangula and Amazon Kingi and ourselves now in leadership. This is the image and picture and future of this country that we want. One Kenya. And so, hongera, wana Kenya. That is the way we want to go.
Thank you so much for making time this morning. His Excellency Kimani Wamatangi, Governor for Kiambu, Honorable Dan Manzo, Senator for Makueni, and Honorable Samson Cherargei, Senator for Nandi. Asanteni sana for making time, and thank you all for the feedback that came through on State of the Nation. President is expected to address the bicameral parliament to this afternoon. I'm sure we'll talk about that again on State of the Nation as well. Bye for now. Coming up next is What's Cooking with Shatter Boy on the other side. All right? See you shortly.